morning, Claremont Center for Spiritual Living. How are you this morning? I'm Reverend Tracy Earlywine, and I'm so glad that you're joining us this morning for our online community. We come together to remember the magnificence of who we are and to live our best lives. How good it is to be able to support each other, to love each other, to enjoy life together as a community. And wherever you are on your spiritual path, you are welcome here with us. Joining us this morning is practitioner Pat Richards. She's going to start us off with an opening prayer and a reading. And to begin, I'd like to invite you just to take that deep breath right where you are and settle in. Just take the sound of the bowl into your heart space. And as you breathe, recognize the love that lives within you. That love, which is the unifying force of all life.
Right here, right now, in this amazing God-filled space, we know that God is. And just as the night gives way to the morning and the light, we too give way. We release the darkness of the night before and look towards the light of a brand new day. And as that very perfect, amazing flower opens up its petals and embraces the sunlight of the day, that is our truth also. We are giving way and looking towards the horizon of a brand new day, taking in the essence, the beauty, the perfection, the gloriousness of the day. And we are inquisitive. We embrace new things. We open our minds to new thoughts and new ways of thinking. And we release the things that no longer serve us. And we refocus. We stand in the presence of God and divine creation. And we are living a good life and embracing others. These are our truths. And these are the thoughts that I want you to take in and breathe into the centerness of your being for the day. And think about what a gift we have, and a gift to share and to touch someone else and to lift them up and to embrace this amazing time that we are in. So I'm so happy to be here today, happy to be of service. And please join me in saying, and so it is. So it is. So my reading today is from Creative Thought, dated August of 2010. And it's called, There is Only One. The power of God is everywhere present as the unification of life. I am an expression of life in action and accept the honor that comes with this awareness. I choose to see spirit in every aspect of my life and every person with whom I come in contact. I am not swayed by appearances that may seem to negate the goodness of spirit in the world. I understand I am in process and moving forward in intelligent, compassionate, and loving ways regarding my unfoldment. I know as I continue to honor the presence of spirit in my daily practice, I make a tremendous difference for good in my life and on this planet. Spirit intends all humanity, including me, to be aware of the unlimited potential available for every person. In gratitude, I honor my oneness with the whole and recognize unity as my true identity. I act from this awareness, knowing divine love and law are my way. There is only one, and I celebrate its life as my life, and so it is.
Thank you, Pat. That was perfect. I want to start today with a quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. We're each sailing out on a voyage of discovery, guided each by a private chart of which there is no duplicate. The world is all gates, all opportunities. My title today is A Good Mystery. And I chose it because we're all really the detectives of our own lives. Now, since the days of Perry Mason, I have been a mystery fanatic. And you can just carry that on through to Sherlock Holmes and Agatha Christie and NCIS and, and on and on and on. There's something about this process of discovery and this combination of investigation and intelligence and reasoning and intuition that I find fascinating. And this idea of the mystery of life. Now, I don't really want to talk about the mystery of life. That's a little bit more than we can do in a Sunday morning talk. But I do want to talk about life's mysteries, those things which pose questions for us, those ideas and circumstances we find ourselves in that we are always looking for a way through, a way to resolution or solution or perhaps revelation. The small mysteries like pandemics and injustice and how to make life better, and what about what to do with your sister-in-law who doesn't have a clue about anything. Not my sister-in-law, sorry, no. But you know what I'm saying? It's like we live a life and there's always these question marks about why things happen and what am I supposed to do with it and how is this supposed to work and why am I not always happy? Those mysteries. It's a good mystery. A good mystery keeps you turning the page, right? You need to know what happens next. Because the truth is, on every page, things change. And every moment in our lives, things change. And we're not at the end of the book yet because we're still turning the pages. We are still discovering and living and figuring out and becoming more of our own story, more of our own path. We have questions to be answered. And how we go about doing that comes back to how comfortable we are living our life and how we might do that in the most, not just productive way, but in the most satisfying way. So by looking at a mystery with its plot twists and its questions and its wondering what's next and the not knowing, for usually in a good mystery, there's pretty much like 15 chapters of not knowing and then 5 pages of knowing the rest of it, right? And sometimes life feels like that as well. And yet we are always moving forward, always progressing on this path of life where we are discovering all of these gates that are before us, these opportunities that are before us. So if I stop and think about what a good detective does, well, first they investigate and they gather evidence and they assign meaning to what it is that they gather. How important is this event versus that event? And how true is what this person says versus what that person says? They're always taking in information. They're always working towards that solution or revelation that's going to bring it all together and make sense and get to the truth. And we are hardwired to look for the truth in our own lives. We need to know that we are where we are supposed to be, that we are doing what is ours to do, that we are growing and thriving. We need to feel that sense of curiosity and enthusiasm and satisfaction. Because we are meant to live life abundantly. And so the detective is always looking for the information and analyzing it and having to guard against making assumptions or believing the circumstantial evidence or only believing what he sees directly in front of him. So most of my quotes today come from great mystery writers. You see, when we try to look at the evidence in front of us, oftentimes we forget that we're not seeing the whole picture. If I observe you having a conversation with someone, I don't necessarily know what you're talking about, what you're feeling, what the other person is feeling, what the intent is, but I will make up a story in my mind about what you're doing. Don't we all? So Arthur Conan Doyle, the author of Sherlock Holmes, is quoted, "Circumstantial evidence is a very tricky thing. It may seem to point very straight at one thing, but if you shift your own point of view a little, you may find it pointing in an equally uncompromising manner to something entirely different." And so we are always called upon to do the great detective work in our life that we might live in the world effectively. But we have to be careful that we are not misinterpreting what's happening. We are called to see rightly. We are called to live from our spiritual nature, not just in the human world. So how do we do that? So we look at the structure of a good mystery, and we realize that any good story deals with, and you can say these along with me because I know you watch CSI, motive means an opportunity. So what are those? Motive are the reasons people do things. We all have reasons. Some of your reasons are really creative, in my opinion, but we all have reasons. The means, do we have the resources to do what we think was done? So we may be solving a crime, but we may just be trying to answer a question. Are the resources available to get to the bottom of something, to have committed the crime, or to have created a situation? And did we have the opportunity? Did we have the possibility available to us, and did we make the choice to go in that direction? Now, most often, we apply this criteria to the world around us and to other people, right? I'm always guessing what your motives are. I think I might know, especially if I know you pretty well. I might think I know what your motives are. But the truth is, I don't really know. You know what your motives are. I find that, again, Agatha Christie is the voice of wisdom. She says, nobody knows what another person is thinking. They may imagine they do, but they're nearly always wrong. Yeah, pretty much. I'm sure you can think of an embarrassing situation or two in your own life where you made an assumption that turned out not to be true. Again, we do not always see the whole picture. In fact, on the human level, we never see the whole picture. And so we're challenged in our life to realize that there's always going to be more to the story, and that we don't know where we're going to end up when we're only in the first chapter, or even in the second chapter, or even in the 10th chapter if it's not the end of the book. So one way to ensure that we approach other people and our world and the circumstances we find ourselves in with a degree of intelligence, and as a good detective would, is to realize that what we're really discovering is our own life, our own motives, the means that we have, the resources we have to live in this world, and the possibilities that we see, the opportunities to make choices that we ourselves have laid out before us. In spiritual teaching, it always starts from within. So whether we want to know the answer to some outside situation, or whether we want to know what we can do to live a better life, we always start with, where am I starting from? It comes down to our point of view, meaning where we are standing and what we can see from where we are standing. Now, You know people who are very rigid in their thinking and very one way about how they look at things. They have a theory and they find all the facts that fit that theory. And that can be an obstacle to actually understanding. And you know, if you're honest with yourself, you do the same thing. Remember, we find what we're looking for. So when we remember that we're not seeing the whole story, we're much more likely to open up to other possibilities. Author Conan Doyle says again, once your point of view has changed, then the very thing which was so damning becomes a clue to the truth. When we do our inner work, the things that we see or feel or experience as obstacles are actually the clues to what healing is possible, where wholeness can be invited in. We are in a position of understanding the crossroads we are standing at so that we might make the best choice with the facts that we have now. Because isn't it true that as you go along in the story, the information sort of trickles out, right? You never get all the information up front. You don't have that big scene in the library where Hercule Poirot explains to everybody what just happened and who did it. He would be nice to invite in once in a while to kind of explain where I am in my life, but that doesn't usually happen. We have to keep reading. We have to keep watching the show. We have to continue to be willing to observe and make sure we're not looking out through a dirty window. When you look out through a dirty window, you have changed the view. If you clean off the window, what was dull and dreary could become bright and colorful. And how do we do that? What does that mean, spiritually? What is that in real life? Well, it means clearing away the fear or the doubt or the second guessing. It means recognizing the biases that we carry and choosing to look at and treat others differently. It comes down to us understanding that we are responsible for our own point of view. And if we are standing on a foundation of spiritual truth, we have a better chance of getting at the resolution or the revelation of what that truth is in our lives, in every circumstance, in every relationship, in every place that our heart wishes to express. So the good investigator, I'm thinking of Miss Marple. She always lived in the small English village. And her way of solving the mystery of the day was to talk to everyone in the village. She would seek out all the people in a way to get all of the different perspectives and viewpoints of the situation at hand. Now, I'm not saying you should go out and talk to everybody and have them shoot down your ideas or tell you how silly that is or in some way try to tell you what you should do instead of what you shouldn't do. But you do have a circle of friends. You do have a spiritual community. You do have spiritual resources that remind you of your truth, your path, ask you the questions that open up your mind to new possibilities. There's something that happens when we talk things through that doesn't happen when we stay in our own head. I know you've done this. You've decided you're going to talk to your friend or your practitioner about an issue, and so you start telling the story and you spill it all out, and by the time you get to the end of the telling, what you're telling them is what you're going to do about it because you've already figured it out. Now, they haven't said a word. Thank you so much. That was such a great talk. I so appreciate that. They didn't say a word. You talking it out is one way to investigate what's going on. In other words, lay out all the clues so that you can see the pattern. You talking to a practitioner is a way to remind yourself that there's a bigger way to look at your life, and a way that allows you to allow your answers to rise up from within you. We're hardwired to seek the answers to the questions, but we make a mistake when we think our reasoning is the only way forward, when we think that we have to figure it out, when we think we're doing it all by ourselves. The more balanced approach, the good detective, always relies on a combination of that intelligence and reasoning and intuition. And what is intuition but that still small voice within? That part of you that knows even what you can't maybe prove in the physical. We are best when we use both. We are best when we allow ourselves to be in a place of observation and awareness before we move forward. Pat and I were talking this week about how all of the social situations happening now, the pandemic, the calls for racial justice, the elections coming up, there's a whole slew, I'm sure you've noticed, a whole slew of things up in the air right now, all of them demanding our attention. And where the point of learning is, where the point of growth is in that moment when you look at a familiar colleague or a woman that you see every day at Starbucks or in the grocery store, and you realize, either because of something they've told you or something you've read or the book study you just finished, and you realize that what they carry in this life is different than what I carry in mine, what she carries in hers, what you carry in yours. That point of awareness opens up possibilities that did not exist before all of these things converged upon our world at once. That's what we mean by finding principle in everyday life so that we might live a spiritual life in this human world. It's recognizing that point of awareness that shifts, that perspective that's broader, that foundation that goes deeper into the eternal truths, into love, into peace, into compassion, into the greatest part of who we are, and allowing that to rise up within us and create this field of resolution, this place where more things are possible, where a coming together is a given, where a solution shows up that leads everybody to a sense of winning, of growing, of thriving. Now, a good mystery, though, is never solved in a straight line, right? There's always a red herring. What's a red herring? A red herring is a misleading clue. It's a distraction. I'm sure you know someone who uses distraction to divert your attention from the serious issues. I'm sure you have someone who will say something that's a little bit vague and a little bit ambiguous, hoping to send you off in a different direction so that they might stay safe and protected. And you yourself may have even done that. Anytime you change the subject rather than continue with a difficult conversation. I've done it. My guess is you have too. That's a red herring. That doesn't really get us to the resolution of the mystery. What it does do, though, is show us where there is a need to clean that window, to clear the space, to remove the fear or the doubt or the resentment or the jealousy or whatever it is that's clouding our ability to show up authentically. Now, in order to find our own way forward, Whether it's a personal situation, whether it's a world issue, whether it's something in your family, or just something in your head. The way to get here is to ask, how do I want to look back on these times that we're in right now? Like when I get to the end of a good mystery story, part of what happens in my mind is like, oh, that's what was going on in chapter 3. Now I understand why that was important. What is it I want to carry forward that I now know is important to me? How have I adapted to this new version of life? How have I grown? What have I learned? What am I becoming? And I'll tell you what I figured out. I know that I have a different idea of what's valuable to me, or at least at a different intensity. So what do I value after this time shut in the house and listening to the news and watching the fires and the hurricanes start to happen this season and all of that? What I know is that I value my community. That my spiritual community, which I have had such limited contact with in the usual way, is so important to me. Each of you is so important to me. And what we build together has meaning and value and depth and richness, and I want to nurture that. What I know now and what I appreciate about where I've come to is how important my relationships are. Now, of course, I always love my friends and my family, but I have a different appreciation. I haven't been able to see my parents very often in these last several months. And so when I see them now, it's so rich. When I go on Friday mornings and see some members of our community, even with half their face covered, it's so rich. It's so meaningful. What I value now even more is being out in nature. How restorative that is, how enriching my life is if all I do is walk outside, get out of my four walls, get out of my head, and look at something beautiful. And I think what has the most meaning now and what I value the most is the nature of time. I don't take it for granted. Some of you may know someone that you may have lost someone to COVID-19. You may simply be dealing with a distance and a separation and a cancellation of family events and weddings and memorials and things that normally engage us in our world. I don't take time for granted. And so looking back on these crazy times now and then even into the future, looking back to now, I want to know that I'm using my time well, that I'm living fully, that I am embracing the opportunities that are here now instead of focusing on what's not here. Agatha Christie says, "It often seems to me that all detective work is wiping out your false starts and beginning again. It's very true that, and it's just what some people will not do. Those are the ones that have the theory, that try to make the facts fit the theory. But it's always the facts that don't fit that are significant. So the way I used to think about how often was a good amount of time to visit my parents or to pick up the phone and call, or to engage in spiritual community, or to be outside, that's all changed. My perspective has changed and shifted and broadened and deepened. And life is better than it was. And I want to look back 6 months from now and be able to say the same thing and more. And that's what I want for you too. That when you look around your life and you see what has changed, that you take from that evidence the meaning and values that are lifting you up and bringing you to your next stage, your next step, that place of growth, that place of expansion. So I invite you this week to think about and get clear on your reasons for doing what you do. Question what you do and be really clear that you are doing things for the reasons which support your life. Your motives are life-giving. I invite you to think about your resources, to really look at what you see as sourcing you. Rather than what you don't have, what is coming in? Do you really know in your heart of hearts that there's only one source showing up in many different ways? Can you trust that? I invite you this week to get clear on your opportunities. Notice if you're closing the door on possibility, if you're finding yourself dismissing your desires or saying you can't or there just isn't enough. And shift that. Turn that around. Remember that your possibilities are limited only by the choices you make. So make a wild choice this week. See what happens. See where you go. See how you grow. For the truth is, life is a good mystery, and the story's not over yet. And every page brings a new discovery and a new energy of life and another step into the revelation of the good that is ours. Namaste. So I invite you to join me in a moment of prayer. Take a moment and take a deep breath. And I am reminded here and now of the presence of the One, that oneness of energy that animates all life. That energy that is a wisdom and an intelligence and an intuitive knowing at the very core of my being. That is the truth for everyone else, that we are unified in this field of intelligence, which is love, in mind, in consciousness, in action. And knowing that my spiritual truth is anchored in this divine intelligence, and knowing this to be true for everyone, I speak a word for the unfoldment of life. That each and every one of us might realize that every step is a step on the path to resolution. That all that we know from within becomes our path forward out into the world. I speak a word for the grand perspective, calling forth that most high perch from which I might observe life without judgment, without assumptions, without imposing my own story, that I might truly listen and accept and allow the stories of everyone in my world. That there might be honor and appreciation between all peoples. That there might be a sense of healing and wholeness happening in every transaction. And so I call forth that healing. For I know that as each and every heart is deepening and expanding and loving, so goes the world. So I put that love out there, sending my love over the mountains and into the sea, recognizing it coming to and from every other person that I meet, allowing that life to live and expand and become in all of its mysterious ways, knowing that it is a good mystery. It is a life for and as good, for it is a life of God. It can only be so, and I am grateful, and so it is. All right. At this time, please join me in saying our affirmation. I'll say each sentence and invite you to repeat after me. My life is an adventure of discovery. All becomes clear as my story unfolds. And so it is. So what's unfolding at the center? Well, we continue to have a wonderful time on Friday mornings. We've had different people stop by at 9 o'clock on Fridays. If you bring a chair and your mask and a cup of coffee, you will find donuts and company and conversation in the meditation garden at the center. We're having a great time, and you don't have to eat donuts if you don't want to. That's more for the rest of us. But we do invite you to come and enjoy the company and conversation. We meet at a safe distance. It's nice and shady and cool in the garden. We meet before it gets too hot. So if you are available Friday mornings, do stop by. It's a great way to reconnect with your community in person safely. Let's see, this Wednesday night is Principals Night, and Mary Breen is presenting to us, and I don't have the topic up here, but it has something to do with spiritual living. I know that. So join us on Wednesdays at 7 via Zoom. We'll be talking about the spiritual principles that guide our lives. And one of the nice things about Wednesdays is that it is always a conversation. It's a great way to ask questions, to hear what other people are doing with these ideas in their own lives, and to get ideas for your own. So 7 o'clock via Zoom. The link will be in the e-blast, the weekly email, and it's also on the website and on Facebook. Before the Zoom service, of course, we always have meditation. Nisa leads us on the phone. There's a phone number to call. That starts at 6:15, and that is a great way to get centered before the service on Wednesday night. I want to remind you also that in a couple weeks, we're taking signups for a book study. The book is In the Flow of Life by Eric Butterworth, and it's a 6-week study. You can choose to come on Thursday afternoons via Zoom or Saturday afternoons via Zoom. If you need technical help, it's available. Just let us know when you call the office or email the office to register. We'll make sure that we hook you up with someone who can help you get connected so that you can take part in this, what will be a very fascinating discussion on this wonderful book. If you know Eric Butterworth's work, you know that it's always life-changing. So do join us, and when you register, we will send you more information about the link and the times and all that good stuff. So check it out. And I also want to thank all of you. You continue to contribute and support this community. We rely on your contributions to do what we do, to keep our campus ready for our return. And as we take these baby steps back into being together, everything that you are able to donate supports that vision. So thank you in advance and already for those of you that are contributing. Remember that on September 13th, which is the Sunday after the holiday weekend, we're going to meet at 7 o'clock in the garden for a short Sunday service. So again, we'll ask you to bring your own chairs, bring your mask. You can bring your beverage if you want to. We'll space out on the lawn in the garden and have the Sunday talk, and we won't do any of the things we don't want to do. We're not going to sing, and we're not going to hug, I'm afraid. But you can stand across the garden and hug each other and be together and join us for an in-person service on Sunday night, the 13th at 7, September 13th. And we'll just try it out. We'll see how it goes. It should be cool enough. It should be light enough. And it should be a lovely, lovely evening. So again, until next week, please remember, you are loved.